Today I will be discussing about graphic design and advertising, more specifically the Australian National Travel Association. The modernist design Percival Albert Tromp, otherwise known as Percy Tromp, is one of the commercial artists that designed many posters for ANTA. While, on the other hand, Tourism Australia are a contemporary organisation who promotes tourists to visit Australia by providing information and offering campaigns. The ANTA posters back in the 1930s created and influenced the image of Australia to people internationally and impacted how Australia is being portrayed now in the 20th century. Percy Tromp was a commercial artist that gained a lot of recognition for his work, specifically the Australian National Travel Association posters in the 1930s. He was born on May 30th, 1902 in Beaufort, Victoria, and studied at Sebastopol State School and Ballarat Technical Art School. He moved to Melbourne in 1923 and worked as a commercial artist and designed multiple posters for ANTA. A few of his awards includes him winning first place in the annual industrial poster competition at the Royal Society of Arts in London in the 1930s. Besides working as an artist, he had also enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force on 4th May 1942 and commissioned as a pilot in June. Later, in the 1950s, Tromp began working for the Australian Publicity Council as a graphic designer. His posters that he had designed for the Australian National Travel Association are known as one of his most iconic works that if people were to buy it now, they would have to spend hundreds to obtain an original copy. The Australian National Travel Association was an organisation that was established in 1929 with the goal to advertise Australia internationally to encourage tourists to visit the country as the world knew little of Australia. Modernism, modernity, and modernization that occurred all the way back in the 19th century helped, shaped, changed, and evolved our world to how it operates today. Modernism was a worldwide movement that occurred in particularly art, architecture, design, literature, and culture. While this term is often used, there is actually no explanation of what it is and therefore rarely defined. This movement occurred partly due to the Industrial Revolution that happened in the mid-18th century, which changed people's lives, such as how they lived, worked, and traveled. The style was different as it goes against the norm that art must be realistic and traditional. Modernist design created their own designs through abstraction, geometry, forms and shapes, colors, different materials and techniques, and being innovative. Modernity was the attitude of people living in a modern industrial society that is progressing to being modern and heading towards a more advanced world. Modernization was a process on how our society changed from a rural and traditional life to urban and industrial. How were the Australian National Travel Association posters made? Back then, there was a printing called lithographic, which was a form of printing that was used often by artists to print posters or illustrations. Lithography was developed in 1796 by Alois Senefelder in just black and white, though later on a French artist, Jules Charette, created a way for lithography to print and produce colorful and bright works by incorporating colors into printing. How lithography works is by using limestone blocks that has a smooth surface which the design is drawn onto it using waxy crayon, then covered with oil-based ink by having it submerged in water. To transfer it onto the paper, the water repels against the waxy drawn area which soaks up the ink. The posters by ANTA were mass-produced through lithographic printing. Originally, they were produced through engravings on either metal or wood blocks that has colors in them, then printed onto the posters. Tromp's posters shows uses of a variety of modern principles and elements. His posters shows color being used a lot, making it an important element in his designs. Especially the field shown here, he used very bright and vibrant colors, which pops out to the viewers. Geometric forms and shapes were also commonly seen in his designs and created the image on his poster, along with how it helped communicate what he wanted to show to viewers and tourists. Being true to the principle of modernism, where the design evokes the spirit of times, mainly all of his designs signifies the present times of Australia, as many of them are iconic landmarks, with beaches being Australia's most known attraction, and how Australia is a modern country. Tromp's works depicts how Australia was modern and was representing modernism through the sceneries and landmarks designed on the posters. The design of his posters illustrates how the nation was evolving and progressing to becoming modern. The posters were being mass-produced through lithography printing, which gave people the impression that Australia was beginning the use of modern technologies, which showed how advanced the country was becoming. Few events occurred during the 1930s, which was when these ANTA posters were being released. Thus, it influenced how the posters were designed and the future years of modern design. The posters were released in the 1930s, during the interwar years, which was the time of peace, which had helped Australia with getting more visitors due to the time period that the nation was being promoted. Generally, most of the posters during the 1930s were designed with sceneries of the beach. Therefore, people internationally had that image of Australia in their brain. A few of the posters were designed showing the ancient and history of Australia. For example, the landing of Captain Cook's and the one with two Aboriginals in a rural land, giving Australia a cultural identity and giving people the background of the nation. The Australian National Travel Association was funded with the government support and were encouraged to hire young designers to promote Australia as a young modern nation, which gave people the image that Australia is modern and young. Tourism Australia is an organisation by the government that promotes and advertises Australia towards tourists to get them to visit, whether for work or leisure, through using a more modern method compared to the ANTA posters. They celebrated 50 years of the organisation in 2017 since they were established as Australian Tourist Commission, then became Tourism Australia. They promote Australia online on their website and through social medias. On their website, they have a variety of campaigns and programs that people can read and join. It gives tourists information about the country and recommendations of attractions. One of their campaign's philosophy that was introduced in 2019 focuses on key landmarks for nature, the wildlife, and food to show visitors where and how to enjoy Australia. The campaign covers 9 philosophies. They are balanced lifestyle, mateship, sense of adventure, no worries attitude, storytelling, boundless optimism, generosity of spirit, the Australian flavour, and love of nature. While it is obvious that Tourism Australia method of promoting Australia is very modern compared to the Australian National Travel Association, both organisations have similar goals and purpose, which is to introduce the country globally and bring in tourists. Tourism Australia does this more digitally and online, as social media and internet these days are what people are always on, and also because it is easy for people to access and to spread around. Whereas the ANTA posters were physical copies, as back in the 19th century, the internet and social media was non-existent. Therefore, the only way for people to know more about Australia is by viewing or walking by these posters that are displayed. Another similar factor between these two organisations is that they both use the beach as a symbol of Australia, as the beach is generally highlighted as the identity of Australia along with great weather. Ultimately, the Australian National Travel Association posters influenced the identity of Australia that people internationally had of the country, which affected how, in the 20th century, where Tourism Australia are advertising those similar landmarks that ANTA did. Trump's poster designs gave Australia an identity to people globally. His posters demonstrated that Australia is modern and was going through urban growth and evokes modernity through modern principles and elements.